Psalm 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. The next is Psalm 23, verses 3 and 4. He guides me along the paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Psalm 46, verses 1 through 5. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day. And then Matthew 7, verses 24 through 25. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock.
Thank you, Jean. The people of Israel knew what their rock was during difficult times. Maybe they lost it occasionally, but they always came back to what it truly was. Matthew talks about it in this last passage, that we need to build our house on the rock. And my question for you this morning is, what is it? What is it that we Christians are holding to during these times? And I want you to just do me a favor this morning. I just want to invite you to go back in your memories for a moment and remember a time when you felt close to what we try to describe in faith communities as sacred, as holy. In the Celtic tradition, they call these moments thin places because there's the membrane between earth and heaven is so thin in these little places that we can actually feel heaven for just a moment, right? Sometimes we call these kingdom of God moments, or meeting God face to face, or the time we experience the divine. So, what are you doing in that memory? Where are you? What are you feeling? And if you are feeling something, could you describe it? You don't need to do that right now. Just hold on to it. If you could maybe go home and write about this, what would you write? For me, it was going back into my childhood. I was in 4th grade, one of the first times I met God or felt that thin place. And I was at church camp. I loved church camp because that's where I met God many times. Back then, they sent us away as 4th graders for 7 full days and 6 nights. I don't know if that was the parents doing or... but I know there was a reason for this, because by day 3 or 4, you got kind of tired at camp. Our defenses would just come down just a little bit. And as a TO, a theological offspring, or a PK, preacher's kid, my defenses as a 4th grader were at an all-time high, man. You know? I wanted nothing to do with anything to do with church. I was trying to fit into the macho culture of Wagner, South Dakota. Boys didn't sing hymns in Wagner, South Dakota, or camp songs. They spat on the ground, and they told dirty jokes to each other. Boys didn't talk about love and helping others. Boys in my tribe talked more about killing things, like pheasants and deer, and any sign of weakness as you talked about those things, man, were you in trouble. And so silly things like campfire songs and holding hands to pray and letting your heart be touched by your counselor's call story, those were like the devil to my boys will be boys reign. But by about day 4 at this camp, they were starting to wear me down, man. At the campfire that night, my buddy Russ, what was he thinking? He moved from the back row to the front row, and he started singing and doing all the actions. What? Traitor? I was in the back row kind of mouthing the words, and he was singing like a fool out loud, mind you. Our God is an awesome God who reigns in heaven above. What? What was happening here? And the thing is, I probably could have taken it that because, Russ was weak, right? He had a dad who was pretty mean to him, and sometimes he had like a little hole in his heart. We all knew that. He was weak, right? But what bothered me the most is that my heart, secretly, mind you, wanted to join in. And when the campfire speaker, a 14-year-old junior counselor who happened to be an incredible football player, he was in the boys' club, man. He was in the Boys Will Be Boys Club. But when he got up there and he started telling us the story of him going on a mission trip and how good it felt to feel God working through him to reach out to other people in love and how it had changed his heart, he was our quarterback. What was he doing? I felt like running away. It was like the all-boys club world relied on what all that all-boys club world was relying on was being kind of turned upside down right before me. And worst of all, I had a lump in my throat. I could feel this song start singing in his story. And it was a song that came from a place deeper than I'd ever felt. It was bigger than me, It was bigger than the Boys Will Be Boys world I had grown up in. And worst of all, I wanted to join with all my heart, to join in. Man, I had to fight this. And I did. Until the next campfire, Russ grabbed my hand and insisted that I go up front and start doing crazy songs. They were doing this song, waddly-acha, doodly-doo, doodly. What does that have to do with God? Seriously, waddly-acha? Come on, at the end it goes, doodly-doodly-doot, toot. Now, how can God use a stupid, silly song like that to turn anyone around, let alone the 4th grade boy named Brooke, who was actually thinking of buying a can of chewing tobacco next week so I could prove to my bunch how tough I was, Now I would be spitting at the highest, How could the Holy speak to me in such a silly song? But it did. Doggone it, God. It did. It got me singing, you see. It got me joining in, and before I knew it, I was holding hands with my friends, fighting back tears, and singing with the heavens. It only took a spark to get a fire going. I remember singing that, and soon all those around can warm up to its glowing. That's how it is with God's world. And then it happened. The veil tore in two. And I wasn't just singing the song with my friends. I was singing a song with all of creation. It made me feel more somehow than I was. More loving, more present, more connected. I could feel the resonance of the Holy vibrating inside and out there. It was as if God was taking the mute off my heart, and I was wide open to this wonderful mystery we in the Christian faith call God. Have you ever felt that way? I know I'm maybe telling a story here, but I'm really telling my story. My friend Rick Pittenger calls these moments kingdom of God moments. One of his favorite experiences happened when he was on a boat in San Diego. They were out on the ocean, and they were going out looking for orcas, and they had sighted some orcas evidently, so him and his wife bought tickets to hop on that boat to get out there to watch for orcas. Everybody there, it was packed, was looking out on the edges, looking for these orcas everywhere, all the way out. Nothing happened. And so they turned around and everybody started talking about everyday stuff, their jobs and everything. Everybody stopped looking out at the railings. They weren't going to see orcas. And then all of a sudden, 5 dolphins popped up. 2 on one side, 3 on the other. And then 15 dolphins joined them. And suddenly, their boat was surrounded by these dolphins. And he said the coolest part was all of us shut up. We were quiet. And it was as if the dolphins and us were one. You ever have that feeling? The dolphins and us were one. And we were like swimming with the dolphins. All things merge into one, he would say. And God's river was right smack dab in the middle of it all. Danielle Schroyer, the author of a beautiful book called Original Blessing, describes these sacred moments as the times where we people are caught in the act of getting caught up in the innate harmony of creation. There's something about these moments that tell us the way we are meant to be, and the way the world's meant to be, and the way God truly is. They are what truly grounds us. They're the rock. They're the rock. Do you hear that? They're what truly grounds us. When we get caught up in the harmony of all creation, it is like we get caught up in the love song of God. It's then that we realize the real truth, that we live in a world that is unfathomably, I practice that all the way here to church, based on a loving and relentless relationship that God has freely chosen to have with us and with all of creation. Don't you just love that? That's God's love song. That's God's love song singing to us, and we get to join in. And these experiences not only stamp on our hearts that we are loved, but they also call us, and this is important. We're not only hear the song, but we get so caught up in it that we start joining it. That's the call. We don't make ourselves do it. Don't do that. I got to do this. I got to do that. No. We allow ourselves to be taken by that song, by that river. We get in the flow of it and allow the flow to just take us and use us and indwell in us. Boy, that's beautiful stuff. But the problem is that sometimes this world doesn't sing that song at all. When I came home from camp, my 4th grade year, singing Awesome God and Pass It On, the first day of school, right after school, there was a bully waiting for me. I didn't even know his name yet, but there he was. And he wanted a piece of me. And although I eluded him that first day, he was there waiting the next, and the next, and the next. How do you sing that love song? How do you love when there's a bully waiting for you every day after school? How do you sing a song meant to be in harmony with the rest of the world when there's a banging, clanging, noisy gong that seems to be covering up all the beauty in this world? Kind of like a bad 7th grade electric guitar player next door, whose parents aren't home, and they turn up the amp about the 10 plus, and they're just blowing the whole neighborhood up. How do you sing a love song when all the press cares about is that seventh grader making all that blasted noise. We kind of know how that feels maybe these days. It's almost like we feel like we need to go out and get a guitar, man. And go and buy a bigger amp than he's got over there next door and play something just as loud and obnoxious. But then when we do that, we realize, oh man, that's not who I am. That's not my song. And that's when we do it out of anger. It just feels wrong. In fact, if we do it long enough, sometimes I think we almost lose who we are. Okay, what do we do now? Huh? How do we respond? How do we respond? Well, unfortunately, many of us, we just stop, man. We stop singing. We stop listening for the sacred that connects us. We end up falling out of love, out of connection with the divine. And then we stop connecting with everybody else. And then we stop loving. And then the inevitable happens. We forget about our call to do no harm in this world. We, as United Methodists, have 3 very simple rules to live by. We're not complex people, despite what we sometimes try to be. We're not. We are called to stay in love with a loving God, to do no harm, and to do all the good we can to all the people we can for as long as we ever can. That's our grounding. And when the world gets noisier out there, when the world starts banging and clanging, hate and division, we need to work even harder at this song of ours. Stay in love. Stay connected to God. Stay connected to the community. Double down on our story. Do more justice work. Do more love work. Mercy work. Remind each other of the times in our lives when the sacred song was loud and strong in our hearts. But also keep singing it and doing it with as many people as we can. God placed this church here for a reason. To sing this beautiful, sacred, connecting song to our neighbors, to our trees, to all of creation. And to sing it so beautifully, in such a silly joy, like we sing Wadley Acha, that they will want to join with us. Now you might be saying to me today something like, okay, but Brooke, come on, that's not enough. That's not loud enough. To sing a song of love it's just too low. It's too slow for our world today. To strive to connect to beauty and make the world a more beautiful place, it's just not going to do it, man. Well, all I have is my story. And it's not a story, in this case, that necessarily won, but it is so beautiful. My dad was arrested once. My dad was a pastor, United Methodist pastor. I know you might say, what in the world could a pastor who ascribed to do love in the world be arrested for? Especially on a Sunday morning, and the biggest Sunday morning, Easter, when he was supposed to be preaching his greatest sermon. Well, we were living in Rapid City at the time, but to be more accurate, Rapid Valley, which was near the Ellsworth Air Force Base. And on the base, and all over western South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, were silos that housed nuclear missiles. And this forever just disturbed my dad and some of his colleagues. Right here in our midst, he would say, there are these weapons of mass destruction that could literally destroy much of God's good creation. And so one Easter morning, instead of having an Easter sunrise service, Dad and his colleagues went to one of these missile sites, these silos, and climbed over the fence and placed Easter lilies at the site. Well, guess what? Easter lilies on a missile site are illegal in this country, or at least it was then. So Dad was arrested. And after the bishop was called, Dad got released that morning. He ended up getting to church about 10 minutes late. That didn't make people too happy. And Dad then proceeded to share in his sermon why he placed those Easter lilies on that site. He shared how he felt strongly that our task as Christians, as people of faith, no matter what faith it was, he didn't care if you were Muslim or Jewish or Lutheran or Baptist or Catholic, if you believed in God's song of love. He didn't care what words you used, but as people of faith, as Easter people, we're called, he said, to put the most beautiful song at the place where the world is most broken, most dangerous, most torn. And for Dad, at least, he chose to place this year's Easter lily at that missile site. And for my mother, who didn't talk to him for about 10 days, I think she came around to it. He did it because it was a sign to the world that there was a more excellent way to live, and a more loving way. As a sign to the world, pointing to a God who wanted us to live together in peace and harmony. Our job, no matter how dark it is to reflect the light, to sing the story, to live the love, to reach the lost, to protest what's wrong, to show the world, point the world to a more beautiful way. I just have to say this, Dad did not win this battle. 2 months later, he went to court and lost. Spent 4 days in jail. 2 months later, Mom did start talking to him. And the missiles, from what I know, probably are still there. But for those of us who heard that message, that song on Sunday morning, and for a police officer who came to church that day because he had arrested my dad, that song forever changed us. Our Bishop Cedric Bridgeforth, was asked recently, how can the church keep going in these terrible times? I asked him the question. And he said, in some ways, Brooke, dark times can be a great time to be the church. When our light is so different than the world's, when our light of love seems such a drastic contrast to the world's hate, people, if we witness to it, notice, if we sing it enough, they don't confuse our song with the world's seductive chorus. We're often at our best, he said, in dark times, if we choose to sing our song and not theirs. If we choose to move past our indecision and fearfulness, the church can have one of the most powerful songs on the planet. We can be beautiful if we only choose to join our God in singing it. And I'd just like to add this last part. This is me. If we only choose to love more deeply now, to care more diligently, to connect with each other more consistently, to work for justice more faithfully, if we learn to bravely draw beauty in the presence of the world's hate, we can be heard. And people's lives, I do believe this, people's lives, and not in the least our lives, can and will be transformed. And all the people said, no, they said, Wadaliacha, Wadaliacha. All right. We have Cassie and Emerson. We're going to share from the movie Brave, Into the Open Air. Cassie, by the way, just turns 8 tomorrow.
Cassie?
No,
I am older than
Emerson.
8.
Emerson.
Emerson.
Thank you, Cassie.
Yes,
Emerson.
her birthday is tomorrow.
This love, it is a distant star, guiding us home to speak to every day, but each word we spoke, the wind blew away. Could these walls come crumbling down? I want to feel my feet on the ground and leave behind this prison we share. Step into the open air. How did we let it come to this? What we've just tasted we somehow still miss. How will it feel when this day is done and we keep what we've only begun? And now walls come crumbling down, and I can feel my feet on the ground. Can we carry this love that we share into the open air? Into